Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fifth meeting of the Budget Review Subcommittee on Education. If you've not already done so, please silence your phones. At this time, please call the roll.
Senator Neal, Senator West, Representative Baker, here. Representative Bojanowski, Representative Graham, here. Representative Lewis, Representative Palumbo, Representative Riley, here. Representative Timoney, Senator Mays-Bledsoe, Senator McDaniel, here. Representative Bowling, here. Representative Bray, Representative Petrie, Representative Tipton,
here.
Co-Chair Banta,
present.
Co-Chair McCool, Chair Deneen.
Here. At this time, we do not have a quorum. Is that correct? All right. We will hold off on the approval of the minutes. I believe we have maybe a couple of folks that may be today. As they come in, we will circle back to the approval of the minutes. On today's agenda, it is one that is near and dear to me as a former public educator, and that is the issue of our school resource officers and school safety for our students and staff across the Commonwealth. We have several folks with us from the Center for School Safety today that will be presenting. So I would like to invite them up to the desk and come on up, and we will get this part of your presentation started. Please, when you do get up there, please take the moment to introduce yourselves, and we will go from there.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm John Akers. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Center for School Safety, and it's a pleasure to come and share some information with you. And so I brought some of my support staff with me, and I'll call them up as you wish to have them respond to different questions that you may have after I finish my presentation here. Let me see if I can get the PowerPoint working here. I received an email from Elizabeth Columbia, who is, I guess, your LRC person, and she asked me to look at 2 points of interest. One would be school funding, and the other one, as you said, Senator Deneen, school resource officers. So I'm prepared to talk about the school safety funding, and I'm going to take it all the way back to FY99 and then take it all the way up to FY26 and show you where these funds go. And then I'm going to call Chief Chris Barrier, who's the chief of the Montgomery County School Police, to come up and talk about SROs and their responsibilities. I have along with me Ms. Barbara Gateskill, who's the Associate Director of the Kentucky Center for School Safety and has been with me for the last 34 years as either an assistant principal with me or my associate here, Ms. Gateskill. And then I have Dr. Leanne Morrison, who is our school safety analysis and person that works with our law enforcement folks as well. So we're prepared to answer any kind of questions you have after we get finished with this presentation here. What I'd like to do at this point in time, at the 30,000-foot view, so to speak, review the safety legislations that our General Assembly has passed over the years. Started off with House Bill 330 in 1998. That was in response to the shooting that happened down at Heath High School down in McCracken County. And basically that established the Kentucky Center for School Safety. And it also established an accountability system, there it goes, for schools to look at board and law violations and provide the data at the Department of Education. In December of 2012, we had the tragedy at Sandy Hook in Newtown, Connecticut. At that time, the Senate Bill 8 came on the books that basically enhanced the EOP, stands for Emergency Operating Planning, and access control, where we're trying to target harden our schools. Senate Bill 1 came on the books after the 2018 shooting down at Marshall County High School, and I'd like to use the word comprehensive piece of legislation. The School Safety Resiliency Act, I think, is a model for the country, and I've testified before our groups before here saying that I've had at least 18 directors of school safety in other states ask me for copies of Senate Bill 1. That's something that I'm very, very proud of what you all have done. You did your homework on that. You didn't do a knee-jerk reaction. You took a whole year to study it, and you brought out a really good piece of legislation that I say breaks it down into 2 areas. Hardware, which is your law enforcement and your emergency management planning, things like that. And then the hardware side of this thing, where we're looking at what's making these kids cook a little bit, talking about their mental health issues and how can we try to address issues in a preventative way. Then Senate Bill 8 came that very next year to help further define what the School Safety Resiliency Act was saying and helped us out a little bit better there. Then Senate Bill 2, this past legislation, brought in the Guardian Plan, the School Mapping Plan, brought in a little bit more accountability on the trauma-informed care in the schools. And as a former high school principal that had a very tragic experience with 5 kids committing suicide during my 25 years, I'm particularly tuned in on the suicide prevention legislation that you all passed. And of course, the Stop Tip Line is a partnership with us and the Office of Homeland Security here in Kentucky. We've been up with this Stop Tip Line, running it for the last 6 years, and it is a very active tip line. We're getting over 100 hits per day. And just to give you just a quick scan on this thing, about 40% of those deal with mental health issues. We also get information about the cafeteria food. We don't look at that too much, but we do get good information on what we can do in a preventative way, and kids are using this. Senate Bill 91, which you all passed, helped me with our center, with our operation budget. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. Then House Bill 6 is helping out defray the cost of SROs in our state. When we passed when you all passed House Bill 63 requiring SROs in the schools, we saw an uptick of people who are stepping up to the plate and are being trained as SROs. We guesstimated 825 would be this year, and you'll see here in a few minutes where we're at 826, so that was a pretty good guess. We're estimating 900 SROs for the next fiscal year, and that's why you get 20,000 times 900 gives you that 18 million. Okay, here's a snapshot. This is a 30,000-foot view of the allocations. The first year in FY99, that was a half year of budget with us. Then we went up to right around 12 million. And that doesn't all come to me. I'll explain to that in a minute. We operate over 10%, off of 10% of those funds right there. And you can see when we got into the Great Recession how everything just cut in half. But you didn't leave me without any funds. You gave me enough monies to keep things rolling. And then when the funds started coming back after the Great Recession, you responded accordingly. And then in FY 19, which is 2018, that's when the Marshall County thing happened, you came back with 13 million, and we stayed at that for the next 4 or 5 years until this past session where I came in and tried to explain our center's issues where we were not able to handle all of the requests that we've had. We had to create waiting lists for school districts for the next year, and now, and I'll say this in a few more slides down here, we're able to handle all of our requests this year. This is simply a snapshot of your Senate Bill 91, which allocated $15 million for school safety. And you can see where it had that 10% for me at that $1.5 million. I was lobbying for and asking for more money. And thank goodness we received it, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. So that's how that $2 million came to the Kentucky Center for School Safety. Now, breaking this down a little bit more for you, we have the $15 million minus my $2 million gives $13 million there. Our board of directors, who are all appointed by the governor, set this formula for us every fiscal year that we deal with our school safety funds. The Department of Education several years ago asked for an allocation from those funds dealing with mental health folks that deal with mental health issues at the Department of Education. Primarily, our center deals with the law enforcement and the emergency operating plans with school districts like that. So we were happy to bring them on as partners there. Gave us a budget of $12 million and some, or I should say a balance of $12 million and some change. And so the formula that goes out to the school districts, every school district, if you're Fairview Independent or if you're Jefferson County, you get the same allocation of $20,000 per school district, okay? That leaves a balance of $9 million and some change. You see the figure down there, that $591,000, those are the students based on average daily attendance. So we take that $9 million, divide that student enrollment on average daily attendance into that, and we come up with $15.71 a kid. So each school district gets their $20,000 plus $15.71 a kid. So you're looking at Jefferson County with 90,000 kids. You can see where those figures really come into play. Fayette County the same way. And you go to your smaller districts, and I always like to talk about our friends in Fairview. They don't get the biggest piece of the pie on that. But that's the formula on how we disseminate the monies out there. And again, this is just a recap right here. The Center for School Safety has two partners in addition to EKU, Murray State University and the Kentucky School Boards Association. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that partnership, but we've been together as a partner group since 1999. And again, I'm looking at that 221,000 for KDE, then again that 20,000 per district, and I put an asterisk by that, and I'll talk about that in just a second, plus the $15.71 a kid times their ADA. Now, we have 171 school districts, but we give money to the Kentucky School for the Blind, School for the Deaf, and Model Laboratory. So they all get $20,000, but they don't get the per pupil allocation. Okay, now I had to stick this in there to tell you a quick thank you for the monies that you allocated to us and increased my operation budget. I mentioned Miss Barbara Gateskill, over here. She runs our program for the School Safety Assessment Program. That's where we survey all of the teachers, survey all of the students, and all of the parents of a school. We get information on what we see as far as the climate and culture in the school, how things are going. We have like 75 questions we ask on those surveys. After we get the surveys, we send a 6-member team to the school for a full day of interviews. 6-member team. 5 of them interview over 130 people, and we have one person that goes around the campus looking at the physical plant issues like that. This is probably the most sought after service that we have, that superintendents see as a proactive way getting ahead of a problem, so to speak. So we bring in these fresh eyes, and we examine that school, and we crank out probably between 25 to 30 pages worth of recommendations for them to consider. And I'm sure Barbara will tell you this, that when she sends out a notification that we're going to be doing these assessments, they will fill up within probably 8 hours. Superintendents hit this like piranha. They go after it really, really quickly. It's very, very important to them. We have assessed over 1,300 schools in our state. Last year, we were only able to do 65. Because of your funding to us, we were able to fund 110 of these in public schools and 30 in private schools. So that's just a little bit on that. Threat assessment teams are required in all schools, okay? And many of the schools, we found out, were getting trained by people from outside of the state of Kentucky. Now, for those of you who were on the education committees in 2018 and 19, you may remember I brought Bill Modulewski in from the U.S. Department of Education. Bill and a lady from the U.S. Secret Service named Marissa Randazzo created the threat assessment program back in 2002. I asked those two people to train my folks in Kentucky on that model. And we believe that Kentucky people should help Kentucky people. So now we are doing threat assessment training from our shop to where we are in over 109 school districts with this training. And we're not a one-and-done group. When we leave, those trainers give their threat assessment teams their cell phone numbers. If they have an issue, they're willing to help that. Last year, we were only able to do 25 of those assessment trainings. This year, we're doing over 70 because of the funding that you gave us. When the COVID monies came, I was able to capture some of the COVID monies when we weren't out in the streets. And being a former principal, I knew about the KPIT program, the Kentucky Principal Intern Program. That died due to lack of funding. I'm sitting around with my team leaders who are former principals with 10 to 15 to 20 years experience. I thought, why don't I turn those folks into mentors as well with new principals? So I used some of that money, and I called some of my friends who were superintendents, and I said, hey, you want to try a pilot program with me? You're going to have a new principal. What about me sending one of my team leaders there to be a mentor? Not only did they know how to run a school, but they've been trained in current practices in school safety. So we started off with 8, then we grew to 25, Then we grew to 40, and then I had to cap it off last year. But because of the additional funding that you give me, we're doing 60 this year. And I had to cap it off at 60 because I don't have any more mentors. So I got to look at getting some more mentors coming on board. But we are having roughly 125 new principals take their roles every year in the state of Kentucky. And so we feel that this was something that we could do to help them out. And I also want to say one other thing, too. During the COVID years, I brought together a team of 25 principals in the state. We have elementary, middle, and high school. And I love our universities, but I don't think they prepare their principals the way they should. And so I asked these principals to give me a cookbook on how to run a school. And so we have prepared a folder for new principals, and it talks about the first 30 days when you take over in July. What do you do in August? What do you do in September? What do you do in October? What do you do about the school laws? What do you do about operations? What do you do about academics? What do you do about these different things? This is a cookbook that they use, that every new principal gets in our state, that we serve as a mentor. And again, we're very, very proud of that. And I guess I hit the wrong button here, didn't I? All right. So those are just some of the programs that I added to that I'm able to fund, in addition to all the standard stuff that we do as far as the training is concerned, our regional trainings, our district trainings, and our annual conference. Our annual conference had over 600 people in it this year, half and half with law enforcement and school administrators. We were able to make this work financially because we borrowed the services of Great Crossings High School, which is an absolute beautiful school. It was perfect for our sessions there. And so we're going to have it every year, and we're going to enhance that program. I want to talk real quickly about our partnership. Eastern Kentucky University, which is my home university, I have all my degrees from there, is the main administrator of the Center for School Safety. We are the hub of it, okay? As I mentioned to you before, the School Board Association has been one of our partners from day one. They are what I call the boots on the ground folks. They're the ones who hire our consultants, and we do the training of the consultants to get out in the schools to do the work that we need to have done as far as school safety is concerned. They provide the training and technical assistance, and right now, I don't believe in sending a school district a link on a computer. I believe sending them a live body that can sit there, press the flash, and talk to people about what they need to have done in their schools. Murray State University, for those of you who can turn the clocks way back, you may remember Jack Rose, who was the dean of the College of Education down at Murray. He was a very integral part of getting Murray State University as a part of the Center for School Safety, which we needed to have somebody in the far west to help promote our messages and whatever. They run our resource center, and they run what I consider the best website on school safety in our country. And if you haven't visited us, visit that one right there. That's a little quick shot there. Here's the way we divide the money up. This is my current budget right now. Since KSBA is using our retired educators on a 1099 to be consultants out there, they get a bigger piece of the pie. Early on, I was running the consultants through Eastern Kentucky University, and when you try to run an invoice through a university, you get hit with a lot of, shall we say, red tape. For example, that if we were going to send in an invoice in the 1st of October, our consultants may not get the check back to them until December. And they're loading up their credit cards with gas and their housing, their lodging, and things like this, and the food. So with our partnership with KSBA, what they do there is once they get a invoice in on a Monday, they'll cut a check on a Thursday and send it out by the next week. So the consultants are getting their pay that way. So that's why they get a bigger piece of the pie. Murray State University obviously runs our website and our resource center. And I need to mention to you, too, Patricia Greer is head there. Now, Patricia was the principal at Marshall County High School when that tragedy occurred there. She's an outstanding person, good administrator, and she's a part of the National Principals Recovery Network. Those of you may remember Frank DeAngelis from Columbine High School. She is partnering with that group, and you don't want to be a member of that group because you are a member of that group when you've had a tragedy in your school. She is a national consultant for us as well, promoting anything that we can to help out our schools that have had tragedies in their schools. So I just want to call that to your attention.
I'd like to just pause just for a second, because we've had several folks that have had brought up some questions, and before we go into any further information, sure. I think it'd be responsible to allow those folks to ask some of those questions that you've brought up, some of those topics already.
Okay.
I'd like to call on Representative Timoney.
Mr. Chairman, if I could wait till the end.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Thank you.
Representative Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know whether mine needs to wait to the end or right now, but I'll go ahead and then we can go from there. Thank you, Mr. Akers, for your presentation. We appreciate everything you've done for the Commonwealth and for our students for a long time. I, like you, am a retired high school principal. I know that I lost countless of hours of sleep as a high school principal worrying about school safety because I felt the burden of being responsible for 1,300 students and over 100 employees. And that's a great burden to feel. A thing that we have going on in our area now, especially about 4 or 5 weeks ago, is we had a lot of threats and rumors of shootings or whatever at schools that causes schools to have to make very difficult decisions. One, they have to decide whether they're going to continue school and risk losing money because they have a large number of students that miss because parents are scared, or go ahead and have or not have school, and then that creates a burden for parents, teachers, and everybody else. I don't know how we need to handle those rumors. I don't know what the Commonwealth needs to do. I think something has to be done to make it very unpleasant for anybody who wants to spread false rumors and who wants to make threats. I know that there was a student in Nashville that they caught making threats, and when they asked her why, she said she thought it was funny. There's nothing funny about a threat toward a school. It drives parents crazy. They have to decide: do I send my student to school? And if they don't have school, well, where are they going to find a babysitter? Do they have to take off work? So when we have situations like this, this creates a great burden for the entire community and for the school system. And I'm kind of thinking out loud. I don't know what can we as a General Assembly do something to make the punishment or whatever for people who make threats much greater, so it gives them pause as to whether or not to be involved in doing something like this. So I don't know if you have any ideas, or anybody on the committee has any ideas, but I really think we've got to figure out a way to lessen those, so we can have school, and so our students can get educated, and so parents can feel safe about sending their kids to school. So I just want to make those comments. Thank you.
You're spot on. You're exactly right. What's going on like that? Two things I'd like to say. Senate Bill 1 and then Senate Bill 8 what's the word I want to use here? Made it a little bit more specific on terroristic threatening, where it specifically mentioned, threats at a school, threats on staff, threats on kids, threats to do destruction. And now it's a Class B felony, and we're catching these kids doing some of this stuff. Where we need to have, and as a fellow principal, we're not going to change behavior unless we have a meaningful consequence. And the meaningful consequence lays on the court. If the court will support the schools and fine the parents the $5,000 that's in the law, make the kids stay in some juvenile detention on the weekends, or do some community service and things like this, where there's a bite in this thing. If we don't have that support in the courts, then we're not going to be able to do much as far as the school level is concerned. That's number one. Number two, parents are to receive a letter from the schools during the first 10 days of school saying that if your kid engages in this type of misbehavior, here's the law. And, I send out the template letter every year to the school safety to the school safety coordinators, and to the school safety resource officers, and to the superintendents. Now, I'm hoping those letters get out. Sometimes they hide them in that code of conduct, and that, how parents sign off those things, they don't read them as well. But that's in the law, that parents are supposed to be notified during the first 10 days of school that if their kid engages in that, then they're going to have some accountability for that, number one. Second thing, and we don't want to get into the details, but we had training just recently from the FBI and Homeland Security on how to handle swatting. That's what they're calling this, the hoaxes that are out there. And I don't want to state in a public meeting what some of those new strategies are, but they are doing, and when I say doing, they're doing a lot of thinking about how to address these issues and not disrupting the school day as much as is possible. And we can have private conversation about that, and I can share that with you. So those are a couple of things that are out there right now.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take my question now, and I may have another one for later. John, always a pleasure to work with you and your group. You do such outstanding work. I think about our friends down in Georgia, Uvalde, Texas, and other places around the country who've experienced tragedy. I just wish they had some of these things in place that we have here in Kentucky. We're very fortunate. I'll echo Representative Riley's comments about the issue of unwarranted threats. Had a school district in my house district that had to evacuate on a very short notice. That was probably a wise decision, but again, my concern on that would be when you do the evacuation, you're putting a lot of students in close proximity to each other and in an exposed area. So that's just another, and I don't know what the answer to that is, but I'll just plant that seed there. Maybe you and your staff can think about better ways to do that. Now, what I really meant to talk about is I almost said amen during your presentation. I've been polling principals with the question, when you went through your principal preparation program at your university or school, did that prepare you to be a principal? And the answer I always get is no. I had to figure it out on my own. So I think, I hope as a body that we will work with educators, the education community, and provide resources to help prepare these principals for a very, very difficult job. I've been principal for 3 days in the last 3 weeks. So I've been boots on the ground seeing a lot of things they deal with. So I appreciate you making that comment. And you had mentioned about you got COVID funding. Now that those dollars are drying up, have you received enough additional funds from the General Assembly to allow you to continue this principal mentorship programming?
That's a loaded question.
Okay.
Because I don't want to look a gift horse, so to speak, because I received $700,000 more with this allocation compared to what I had before. So I'm very grateful for that. What I'll do at this point in time is I will see how this pans out the next 2 years. And if it increases as much as I hope that it will be, then I'll come back and share my data with you all and see if we can't find something else to help out like that. But I'm very grateful for what we have at this point in time, and so I'll just wait and see. How's that sound? Okay.
All right. I think we have one more before we can move on. Senator McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, good to see you again. Thanks for everything that you're doing and the way you're expanding and pushing the program. Quick question. So we have the allocation to the 174 school districts there. Do we do anything to assist any of the private school systems with school safety?
Okay. Let me talk about this slide real quickly, and then I want to get into that because, yes, we do a lot for for private schools. You wanted to know how these safe schools dollars are spent out in the state, and there's your quick chart right there. It used to be with alternative ed, but after House Bill 63 came on the books, we started increasing the SROs. And so that's why people are using their allocation. When I say people, superintendents are using their allocations more with SROs than they did with alternative ed, and you can see how the rest of that goes down. Now, let's talk about private schools. Right or wrong, I believe that in my tenure, we've been working with private schools off the record, so to speak. Anytime they called me, they said, hey, can you give me some help here? Can you give me some help there? I would send people out to help them. Oftentimes, the people who I would send out would be volunteers or friends of mine that work for school safety that would go over to the diocese in Louisville or go up to Covington Diocese or go to whomever and see what we can do to help out. When Senate Bill 91 came on the books, it mentioned private schools in there, which I was very grateful for. So now we can be a little bit more overt with working with the private schools. And I'll go back as far as 10 years ago telling you that we were working with private schools in one form or fashion. Most of that was just sending resources to them, electronic resources, or in my case, I would go up and talk with them. I had full-time staff members that would come up with me and share information with them. Now we're able to expand our services. We are going to do right now 30 assessments of the nature that I talked about a few minutes ago on a smaller basis, because some of your private schools only have a couple hundred kids rather than 1,300 or 2,400 like I had. So yes, we're going to be working with them. We've done threat assessment training. We're doing gatekeeper training. A lot of them are picking up a lot of the laws that we do in public schools in the private schools with the security vestibules, checking people coming in, making sure that their doors are being locked and things like that. So, yes, and we hope to expand more services as we go down the road with this.
So we're helping them with those kinds of things. Are we doing anything like for school resource officers, helping financially with those at all?
Okay. School resource officers, private schools are welcome to come to any of our trainings that we have for free. Now, as far as the funding stream is concerned, that came out of, I think that was House Bill 6. That's going to public SROs at this point in time.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm. Any other further questions at this time before we move forward? All right, seeing none.
Okay, we'll scoot on here. Another piece of the legislation that you had that's helping us out in the schools, all these are building blocks. What you're doing with SROs, what you've done for me, what you're doing for the superintendents. Here's another piece that came on the books. This was like about 5 or 6 years ago, helping out with our school-based mental health services providers. Those are guidance counselors, school psychologists, and or school social workers. And here again, we have an allocation of $7.4 million, and it was levied upon us, the Center for School Safety Board of Directors, to figure out how to divvy up this money. And so I felt that it was important to talk to the superintendents first about this. So I got with the Board of Directors of KASS. I said, ladies and gentlemen, how would you like for this money to be distributed? Since it's a smaller pool of money, we can't use that same formula that we use for their Safe Schools allocation monies that I mentioned to you earlier. So they said, let's just cut it equal parts. So basically what we're doing is dividing that by 172 school districts. And let me explain this to you. So that's 7.4 million divided by 172. Now, if you're doing your math, you found out that I said we had 171 school districts. Well, legislation wanted to give Model Laboratory School a piece of the pie there too. So that's how we divided up among 172 entities, so to speak. 171 districts plus Model Laboratory. They get 43,000 and some change. Now, if you're Jefferson County, that's a drop in the bucket, but if you're Fairview Independent, that's manna from heaven. They think it's wonderful, okay? So everybody's getting a piece of the pie there, so to speak. I still believe, and I know you all do, that that's going to be a local decision on how they're going to use those funds. But the one criteria that you put in the law, that it needed to be a school employee, so they could have some kind of accountability as far as whoever they hire in that position. So I just want to tell you that I certainly appreciate that as well, and I know our mental health care providers, though it's not a whole lot of money, it's something that's very, very important. So now I'm going to ask for Chief Barrier to come up here and join me, and I'll ask him to introduce himself to this, and I want to talk just briefly about some information that you asked me to provide, and then I'm going to let Chief Barrier take this on and move down the road here a little bit. I was asked to give you a profile on how school resource officers have grown over the years. And as you can see, I went back to FY15 all the way up to the current time, which is 826 SROs. I say I, but Leanne Morrison, Dr. Morrison, provided me with this information. She's our data person. Again, I'm just a spokesperson. They're the ones who do all the work, so I really appreciate them. So that's a quick snapshot like that. You wanted to know also, where are they? So you can see where we have 604 that are assigned to a single building. Then we have 141 that are assigned to 2 buildings. And then we have roughly 81 that are assigned to 2 or more buildings. So that's how it's divvied up as far as their assignments are concerned. And now I'd like to turn it over to Chief Barrier to talk about the role of SROs and their responsibilities.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Chris Berry. I'm the Chief of Police at Montgomery County Schools. I thank the Assembly for having me here today, Chair Deneen. If I could briefly go back to Representative Riley's question, I wanted to clarify something that the Assembly has already done in 2024 was to, and build on what Executive Director Akers said, was the Assembly did amend the terroristic threatening second statute to make it a Class D felony for some of those threats and those kinds of things, just to clarify that just a little bit for you all. Again, I am a practitioner by trade. You want to speak this morning on budgeting and those kinds of things and how those monies are applied to school districts, and I'm a product of that. As those monies became available to school districts this past year, our district thankfully was able to double the size of our police department, allowing there to be an SRO in a one-to-one basis across our district as it was required in Senate Bill 1. And so again, we're very thankful for those funds that the Assembly was able to provide to us. As part of that, it's really important to understand now, once the bodies are in the building, how they're applied to the culture and the climate within the school district. And I think it's really important. The national model for SROs across the country is that they serve three basic principles and purposes in a building. And this is what we call the SRO triad. And that is that they serve as an informal counselor, teacher, and a law enforcement officer. So the law enforcement officer is the easy part. It's what we do every day. We wake up, we put our uniform on, and our presence alone allows us to serve in that capacity and acts as a visible deterrence to crime and that kind of thing. But for the majority and the most part of our day, we're serving in other roles in the school district that's much more beneficial than the law enforcement officer most generally would ever be. In that, and you can see on the list that we provided on the slides, is that we foster a positive culture in the schools. We build long-term, meaningful relationships with students and staff. So that is one that I feel, for me, is the most important thing that we do. It is the cornerstone for what we do and what I train our SROs in our schools to do is to build long-term and meaningful relationships with those kids. Now allowing those SROs to be in the elementary schools, it has even strengthened that principle for us because it allows us to make early interventions and engagements with students, even at the elementary levels, and build those relationships into when they become middle schoolers and high schoolers. And it also helps us to reduce the likelihood that those students will become victims of what we might consider to be a negative encounter with law enforcement, okay? Because we have those long-term meaningful relationships, we're able to reduce recidivism and reduce the likelihood that those students might even become arrested in the first place. So building trust among students and staff, I think that's really important. I think that they need to understand that we're there to serve them and service students. Serving an informal counselor, I think that I can't emphasize enough how important it is for us to be able to be trusted individuals in schools when students come to us with issues that they may not feel comfortable talking to other people about. So we want to collaborate with administration on school safety models as mandated by law. Administrators are charged in the state with developing school safety models, and we're going to be subject matter experts for them in that. One of the things that, and again, I just want to share a quick story about how the teacher and educator piece is really important as well. I don't teach every day. I've just yesterday had the opportunity to go to a high school civics class and teach the students in the class about the Fourth Amendment, which is, again, protects students from unreasonable searches and seizures. Now, what's really important, and I started the conversation with the students, is that amendment is there to protect them, right? And so I talked to them about the Fourth Amendment and how searches and seizures in real time, real life experiences. And I think it was really a very good way for us to engage students, both educationally and personally, on that level. I want to talk briefly about one of the points that was brought up, and when it was the term safety issues was brought up in the email that invited us here. And I wanted to just help you guys maybe to understand that when we talk about safety issues, we're really looking at that through two separate lenses. And that on one hand, the SRO will serve as a law enforcement liaison for all things resulting in law enforcement response. And those are typically the crime-related issues, the assaults, the thefts, the destruction of property, the general disorders, and those kinds of things. As well as the SRO will serve as a subject matter expert in collaboration with school administration over things that are school-related, crisis incident response, drill planning, development of the school safety plan. And so when we talk about safety issues, which was, again, in the email that was in question for us this morning, I really wanted to help you guys maybe focus that the two are, it is through two separate lenses, and that the term safety issues is a broad brush. But again, I wanted to help put that in perspective for you all.
And something that I'd like to add to what Chris was saying here, in the school that I was involved with, I had 5 SRO officers in our building. And with the number of, and I'm going to turn to Leanne Morrison here on this thing to make sure that I'm correct on this information, out of all the contacts that kids have with SROs where there's been a behavior violation, less than 2.3%? 2.7? 6. Okay. Less than 2.6% out of all those contacts ended up in charges being filed against the kids. So you're looking at 7% less that have not gone to juvenile court, where the principal and the SRO work together with the family to keep the kids out of juvenile court and to see if we can't set them on the right path to correct their behavior. I think sometimes there's a misnomer out there that these guys are just, wanting to get the paddy wagon backed up to the school and put as many kids in there as they can be. That's not the way it operates. These guys are good, and ladies, I mean to mention too, are fantastic role models. And the training that came to these folks because of Senate Bill 1 of 2019 that revamped the entire SRO training up to 120 hours. And I will say this, and I hope Chris will agree with me, we had some grumblings from the old SROs back in that time, saying, now, we've already been trained. We don't need to be trained again. But when the older officers went through the new training, they said, we wish we had this training earlier on, because we've divided it basically in 2 camps again. And so much of that deals with mental health issues that these kids are dealing with. Chris, would you like to talk a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was an old head myself, and I had taken SRO 1 and 2. And as the School Safety and Resiliency Act was passed, we then were required to take 120 hours of training. Even if we had already had the other previous 2, we were required then to take the 3 sequential classes. And I can't express to you guys enough how important it was for us to get the mental health piece, the students with disabilities piece, things that we had just generally not had the exposure to before. I want to talk briefly on something John said. So there is a term that's used in the media, and that is that schools with SROs are school-to-prison pipelines. I really want to address that with you guys, because I think it's really important to understand is that, at the end of the year, if we have a certain number of students who are charged with particular crimes, they don't give us toaster ovens because we won the prize. And so the idea is that we want to reduce the number of law enforcement encounters we have, and ultimately to reduce recidivism. So even if a child was to result in some sort of criminal charges being placed in schools, our idea is to reduce that likelihood that they reoffend. And again, I think there are protections in place in law that allows us to work with children who do violate the law and integrate them back into school successfully. And I think that's so important that we understand that when we do bring students back, is that their success and a success pathway for them. I think it's critically important that people understand that. Last night I was at Kroger with my wife, and I was able to see one of our students who again had offended when they were youthful. And now he's a successful young man with a 3-year-old baby and a wife and a job, and we're hugging, right? And so that's really important to understand that there are successful pathways for students beyond their offenses. And I think that when we have SROs in buildings who are able to build those positive, long-term, meaningful relationships with kids, and when I mean long-term, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this kid was a middle school age student as an offender, and now he's a 25-year-old man with a family, and we're hugging at the meat counter at the Kroger. And I think that guys like that's really the goal. That's the end game for us, right? So anyway, and I don't mean to take any of your all time. I hope that you might have some questions for us that I can hopefully answer for you.
Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that. That's very encouraging, the testimony that you're giving here today. I just want, how do you, or can you gauge your success overall in these schools in terms of what you just spoke about, in terms of good outcomes, redirecting the behavior of kids, that now you can, this is what this is really about. Do you have a method of determining a data set that you deal with or something like that?
Yes, sir. So the data, the only thing that we can quantify as it relates to data is the rate of recidivism. So the likelihood that somebody might reoffend and the likelihood that they reoffend. So that's the most quantifiable way to determine whether or not the things that we're doing, the structures that we have in place in schools are working and are applying and that kind of thing. That's the biggest thing that we can tell is are we able to reduce the likelihood that they reoffend? Not that they offend in the first place, because sometimes that's unavoidable, right? But it's during the time that I have them, during this 4-year time at the high school or the 3 years at the middle school, if they offend, can we keep them from reoffending? And I think that those are the things that are that are important in the long-term sense.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So do you maintain a set of data so you can get that, to determine that? For instance, if you're taking in 100 kids, you have something, you comparing apples to apples, that these kids have not reoffended, maybe 3 out of the 100 or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Do you have some matrix by which you can actually
Yes, sir.
evaluate
And one of the things that we try to do over a period of time is to collect data such as you're referencing. One thing that we also do is that we collect data on the whole spectrum. And that might mean where we have 40 instances of law violations in a particular school year, and that's district-wide. Can we reduce those maybe in half? And we've shown that in our district to be effective, and we've been able to do that and quantify that. And what that shows us is not the fact that they have better kids, not that they have better kids over a period of time. It's that the structures that we have in place might help them to not offend in the first place. And so we can, again, reduce recidivism and reduce the number of occurrences in the same regard.
Can you make that available?
For my particular district, yes, sir, we can.
Okay, I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
If you can. I'll get with you afterwards.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And something I'd like to add to that, and I don't think it needs to be overlooked, is the relationship that the SRO has with the principal when we get into these behavioral issues, working hand in glove together. So it's a partnership, and the whole goal is to keep the kid in school, but make sure that they're a responsible student and citizen when they're in our 4 walls of our school.
Senator Neal, one of the things I think is really important when we talk about installing those SROs at the elementary level, so the child, as they matriculate through the school district, from the elementary to the middle to the high school, one of the things that's a constant for them is that the SRO is there and that there's a relationship with a positive role model in the building. So as the principal graduates that child to the next level of learning, the new principal might not understand or know that child's at-risk behaviors and those kinds of things. One of the things that we're able to do is communicate among one another. Hey, there's a young man coming to you. He has some home environment issues that may cause him to lose his temper at times and those kinds of things. So understanding that helps us to reduce the number of occurrences maybe that are law violations or that we may view them as law violations. And so having them in those younger elementary levels is critically important for us, because as they come to us, I already know who those kids are. The principal may not know, but I know, and our team knows. So it's really important, and I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Representative Timoney.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to comment briefly. Mr. Akers, thank you for everything you've done for the Commonwealth. You've been a public servant for a long, long time. You've been in this role as long as I've been an educator, because after you gave me my first job as a teacher, you retired and took on this role. So for reference, this is my 27th year as a public educator. So that's how long you've been doing it. So thank you for everything that you've done in that capacity. So if anyone wants to blame anybody for my pathway, it's that guy right there. I'm a little disappointed that Miss Gateskill didn't join you at the table. Miss Gateskill was the assistant principal at Dunbar High School for a long time, and then she became my principal. And you all, I know that I've got strengths and I know I've got weaknesses, but that poor lady put up with more mischief on my behalf than anyone should be required to in any capacity. I got to work with you very closely in this past budgetary session, discussing your plans and your budgetary asks. I knew you for I've known you for a long, long time, and I know your commitment to detail. And you don't ask for fluff. You don't ask for cushions on things. If you need $1, you need $1, and you ask for $1. So it was very easy for me to reach out on your behalf and say, he's doing a lot of things with what he's currently got. He's taken that $1 and he's actually getting $2 worth out of it. The principal internship program is something that we must have. We've got to continue. We've got to stay that. And just for people to see that the executive director of the Kentucky Center for School Safety went out on his own and found his own way to provide services to the principals in the state without us asking is a testament to your hard work and commitment to the Commonwealth. Thank you for that. It was the highlight of my professional career, being able to work with you on that, Mr. Akers. I just want you to know that. We couldn't have asked for a better person to be in the role that you're in, and keep at it. You know so many things. The times I've called you and said, hey, I've had school districts reach out and ask about this, and you, without batting an eye, there's no yield there. The return on that investment is not what school safety is supposed to be doing right now. If they wanted to accomplish that objective, they need to look at these other capacities. Data and research shows that these are better alternatives. Like the fact that you can know that just without, hey, I got to get back to you. Let me research on that. Like is a testament again to your skill set and to the professional that you are in the role that you're in. So it was a pleasure for me to work with you on that. You thanked me for my help, but I can go ahead and say the help I gave you was a drop in the bucket compared to Representative Bowling and Senator McDaniel. They were really, really easy to talk to about school safety, and they were really the ones that did most of the work in getting the funding that you'd requested. I know school safety is one of those things that, as a parent, I've got 3 kids in school. I have a son that goes through a metal detector every day. And, the capacities that we talk about with school safety as far as the relationship piece. I picked up my son the other day from school. As I'm checking him out, the last metal detector, the school security piece, the gentleman was working there. He's like, your son's a good kid. And I said, he's at Lafayette High School. There's 2,500 kids there. How does he know my son? And he's probably just kind of talking. And my son goes, no, that's the metal detector guy I talk to every morning. He always checks in on me. He always says hi. So the safety piece is always about relationships. It's about breaking down those walls that people may have, that families or cultures or society may have created for students that may feel that law enforcement is something and I got you. I know driving down here today, I always put my eyes in the rear view to make sure that there's no car with bars on the top of it behind me. We never lose that. That's a very healthy, that's what we're supposed to be. But I think that what you hit on today, the relationship piece, the SRO piece, I look forward to watching the SRO piece grow with additional funding. And I think it will. And I think that's just going to make us even better. But Mr. Akers, thank you for everything, and keep throwing fastballs down the middle. That's what you're known for, and we respect you for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions at this time? All right. You want to continue?
We were at the questions part.
All right, good. All right. Well, I would like to echo Representative Timoney's comments. Most of my career, I've worked with you, and I can tell you as a teacher on school safety committees and as a principal, the Center for School Safety and you have always been an integral part of protecting our staff and our students and improving our community. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'd also like to say what a great job that you do and your organization does with your school visits. Many of our previous principals have gone out and visited to our school districts to do safety assessments with public and private schools, for that matter, and I thank you for that, those efforts, to provide better assessments and better evaluations and timely investments. So I do want to thank you for that. And I'd also like to, since we're talking about funding, I want to thank the members of the House and the members of the Senate and their budget committees. This year alone, I think we added additional $16.5 million. And next year, that will be another $18 million to help protect our students and our staffs in our schools. So our members here value your input, and we understand the importance of protecting our most precious asset, and that's our students and our children. So thank you for your report today. It comes in a very timely manner. And the relationship part, I will say this. Recently in my district, we had a individual that was an SRO that was tragically killed in a motorcycle accident. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about relationships, the outpouring of that staff and those students was amazing. That goes to the heart of having an SRO in the building. It prevents episodes from even occurring. And so I want to thank you for that. If there's not any further questions at this time, I want to remind everyone that our next meeting is scheduled to take place on November the 6th. We will go about approving the minutes for this meeting at that point in time, because we did not have a quorum today. So we will be approving minutes from this meeting and our previous meeting at that meeting on November the 6th. There's no further business before